A.W. Tozer once said, "What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us." The Mormon view of God is perhaps the most fundamental difference between Mormonism and Christianity. Because of this, we should expect that in every defense of the Christian faith, we will invariably have to deal with who God is. In this video, we will discuss 4 major errors in Mormon teaching regarding the nature of God. Number 1, regarding the theistic framework of Mormonism. As opposed to the major Abrahamic worldviews of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, Mormonism is not a monotheistic religion. In fact, it could be said that Mormonism is the most polytheistic religion that exists because it acknowledges an infinite number of gods that are ever increasing in number. Now, the more technical term for the version of theism that the LDS Church holds is henotheism, which is belief in the existence of multiple gods while only worshiping one of them. In contrast, Christians are decidedly monotheistic. We believe that there only ever has been and ever will be one limitless, eternal, unchangeable God. The Creator is altogether different than His creation. There is no other like Him. And we believe these things precisely because this is what God says about Himself in His Word. Isaiah 43:10 says, "Before me no God was formed, nor shall there be any after me." Isaiah 44:6, God says, "I am the first and I am the last. Besides me, there is no God." Isaiah 44:8 says, "And you are my witnesses. Is there a God besides me? There is no rock, I know not any." Our basic theistic framework is probably the most fundamental difference between our worldviews. Number 2, regarding the uniqueness or otherness of God. You likely well know that one of the most distinctive teachings of Mormonism is the Church's doctrine of exaltation, which asserts that men can become gods. Now, it's clear by the Church's teaching on this doctrine that what is meant is that a man, by following all the precepts laid out by God, may himself become a god, receiving worship from those in the world he will eventually create. This doctrine has often been summarized as the Lorenzo Snow couplet, named after the 5th president of the LDS Church. "As man is, God once was. As God is, man may become." The clear error in this teaching is that it presumes that God and mankind are essentially the same species, but in a different phase of development. It implies that there is an infinite regression of gods, that our God eternally bows in worship to His God, and so on. But this was literally the lie that Eve was told in the garden by the serpent. You too can be like God. The Bible tells us something entirely different. In fact, our Christian hope is not that we will receive worship for all eternity, but that we will give worship to the one true God alone for all eternity. As it says in Isaiah 2, "In the end, the Lord alone will be exalted in that day." Furthermore, the LDS doctrine of exaltation is dependent upon a changing God. But our Bible tells us that unlike men, our God is immutable. Numbers 23:19 says, "God is not man that He should lie, nor the Son of Man that He should change His mind." Malachi 3:6 quite simply says, "For I, the Lord, do not change." Our God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Number 3, regarding the Trinity. The Bible tells us that God is one in being, 3 in person. Now, Mormons hold to a version of tritheism, that the Father, Son, and Spirit are 3 distinct beings, or 3 distinct gods. The Mormon view looks much more like Arianism, with a few uniquely Mormon differences, which sees Jesus as a subordinate creation of the Father. Now, it is incredibly common for Mormons to see our doctrine of the Trinity as a foundational error in Christianity. In fact, many Latter-day Saints see this doctrine as their biggest objection to the Christian faith. I've spoken with people who've left Catholicism and converted to Mormonism because missionaries came to their door and finally satisfied their frustration over not understanding the Trinity. They said that they were greatly relieved to hear the missionaries assure them that the Trinity is merely a tradition of men. Many Mormons are quick to point out that the word Trinity is not found anywhere in our Bible, and that fact is often drawn on to claim that it is entirely contrived doctrine of man. In fact, it is seen as so absurd that it is proof of the Mormon doctrine of the great apostasy. So it might be helpful to explain that our loyalties are not for the Word, but the summary teaching about what God tells us about Himself in the Bible. When discussing the Trinity with Mormons, it's helpful to know that they almost universally misunderstand what we believe about the Trinity. Many times in conversations about the nature of God, I've heard a Mormon challenge something like, "If you think Jesus is God, then to whom did He pray in the Gospels?" Or, "When Jesus was baptized, whose voice was it that said, 'This is my beloved Son'? Was Jesus a ventriloquist that He was throwing His voice?" These questions display a wrong understanding of the doctrine of the Trinity. Mormons tend to think that our view is essentially modalism, that there is one God who operates in three distinct modes at three different times. So they think that we see no distinction between the Father and the Son. Honestly, I found many conversations about the Trinity to be satisfied by simply clearing up that we do not believe that the person of the Father is the person of the Son. Christians are quick to admit that the triune nature of God is challenging to understand. But for Mormons, this confusion is proof that the doctrine is false. The reason why people have such a hard time understanding the Trinity is actually quite simple. There is just no created equivalent to God. In other words, there is nothing on earth that compares with the incomprehensible aspects of God's nature. Furthermore, it is God Himself who tells us that mere creatures like us cannot possibly understand the incalculable greatness of His nature. Isaiah 55, verse 8 through 9 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." While not understanding something might be unsatisfying, the real error is when we declare, "If I can't understand it, then it cannot be true." This fallacy makes objective reality subject to the human mind. In other words, your ability to understand becomes the ultimate authority on what is true. Number 4, regarding the nature of Jesus. Mormons refer to Jesus as their elder brother because, quite simply, that's exactly who He is in Mormonism. He is not the second member of the Trinity, the sole creator of heaven and earth. He is essentially the brother of all people, angels and demons, and even Satan himself. It should be not any surprise then that Mormons don't worship Jesus. But according to the Bible, Jesus is uniquely the only Son of God in His very nature. In providing a defense of the nature of Christ as the only Son of God, it might be helpful to explain to your Mormon neighbor that we are not naturally born children of God. The Apostle Paul teaches this by referring to his opponents as sons of the devil and false brothers, and even sons of disobedience. The Apostle John explains that the way we live will bear witness to whose children we are, saying, "By this it is evident who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil." Even Jesus makes this clear in His indictment of the Pharisees of His day. He proclaimed, "Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's will." But the beauty of the gospel is that we can all be adopted into the family of God through faith. John 1:12 says, "But to all who did receive Him, who believed in His name, He gave the right to become children of God." These 4 errors are perhaps the most common regarding the nature of God. And I hope that having a familiarity with them will help you better defend the Christian faith with your Mormon neighbor.